Well, hello there. I'm back again because I'm sick and tired of some crap I've been hearing, and it really irritates me that I can't understand how there can be so many people in this country with 330 million about, and they say so that would leave probably 300 million or so legal citizens. I can't understand how 70-80% of them can be dumber than a stick. It just irritates me. I hear these people, they're out here talking about this open border stuff. Oh, we got open borders, we need to close the borders, this, that, and the other. Well, if there was anybody, including them 9 guys sitting back there that they call SCOTUS, actually it's SCOTUS, Supreme Court of the United States, but the way they've been doing this for the last 200 years, it should be SCOTUS, because they're scuttling us. It's just sad. If you go back and you read history, actually read it, study it, to know what the heck was going on and what the heck was said and everything, you'd understand that since Washington got out of being president, what was that, 1798, I think? There has been a campaign for open borders, removing borders, eliminating borders since then. John Adams got in, and it started out. Well, they passed them Alien and Sedition Acts, and one of them had to do with saying anything against the federal government. Wait a minute now, we had that First Amendment. That don't matter to them criminals back there in Washington that's always been hanging around. That don't mean nothing to them robber barons that come along and made millions of dollars, bought up millions of acres of the United States and all that kind of crap. Nope, don't matter a bit to them. They've been trying to eliminate borders. Well, now, all of this modern, what you call multinational corporations and international corporations and all this whodunit, and now they get back there, old Mr. Biden is getting them people to agree to this 15% tax, global tax the earnings of them corporations and everything. Well, you know who pays for that is the person that is the end user of whatever that corporation or whatever has to do. So what it's going to do is the guy out here making that promised $15 an hour minimum wage, that'll be about the same thing as $1.50 an hour was back in 1967. They're the one that's going to pay it to the government. Well, this open border thing, that's what I was talking about. Back there, Adams, it started out. Jefferson wasn't bad about we didn't want the open borders, but a lot of the people around did. You get up into when that hero, the Battle of New Orleans, 1814, after the war was over. And that jerk wouldn't have won that battle if it hadn't have been for them Lafitte brothers down there in New Orleans and Baton Rouge that was doing all that kind of black market stuff. They were accused of piracy and everything else. But they supplied Andrew Jackson with intelligence about the British and about the territory. They gave him cannons. They supplied him with gunpowder. They supplied him with cannonballs. They supplied Andrew Jackson with a whole bunch of things. Or guess what? Jackson's army would have got their butt kicked after the war was over, and he wouldn't have been such a hero. Of course, that might have been all right, because then he'd never got elected president. So you think about it, in Jackson's presidency, the Georgians and all these people where them Choctaw and them Cherokee and them fellers was living down in Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, etc. The Supreme Court, the Georgians, was causing trouble for them people because guess what? There was gold and stuff on some of that Indian land. Well, the Supreme Court ruled in a case that the natives took to him and said they was sovereign. Them lands was sovereign. And them peoples was sovereign. Well, old Andrew Jackson, he goes and his people, they get up this Indian Removal Act. Well, we'll just move them suckers out of here because we want that stuff, that good land they got. Okay. But Jackson, in the meantime, he tells them people, them Supreme Court guys, if you want that ruling enforced, go do it yourselves. Why, Andrew Jackson was the executive. That means he was the sheriff of the federal government. He was supposed to enforce all that stuff. But he didn't. He was a traitor, a treasonous type feller. Get the picture? A criminal who corrupted the law. Now, it was so bad about that thing about them Indian Removal Act that old Davy Crockett, that Jackson had talked into getting elected to Congress. He told old Jackson, go shove it where the sun don't shine. I ain't want nothing to do with you anymore. So he goes home. Winds up down because he knew the Indians had a right to that stuff. So that removed a lot of borders. Now you get down into after Texas became a republic. Now people nowadays want to complain about that, but that's okay because they're all wrong anyway. Texas became a republic. And it was because of the Anglos and the Texicans. The Texicans didn't want them people down there, that Santa Ana and them people down there, Mexico City, telling them what to do either. So them people had their government in San Antonio that had made the treaty with Steve Austin's father to let the Anglos come down there. All this, so you need to read these things. It ain't what these people are telling you now. These people that are telling you now are lying to you. But anyway, and then the federal government didn't want that Texas territory. So Texas remained what it was, a territory, but it was the territory of Texas. It was sovereign from Mexico. It was sovereign from the federal. But you come along a few years later, and the president, them people decide they want Texas. Well, that's going to give us some good stuff. We got this, what they call it, about where they were entitled to all this land. It had a nice religious type sounding things, but it was just saying there was a bunch of thieves sitting back there in the federal government in Washington. So they come up, well, there was a discrepancy. The Mexicans said the border for Texas was the Nueces River. The federal government in Washington said, no, it's the Rio Grande. So the president, he goes and he sends cavalry across the Nueces River into the disputed territory. They get down there by the Rio Grande, and some of them federale-type soldiers says, "Get the hell out of here," and took a few shots at him. There was a little run-and-gun battle going on, and 12 of them cavalrymen, them wonderful U.S. cavalrymen, got their butt killed. Well, the report come back. The president, he goes to Congress. He goes to the public. He gets published in the newspapers. American blood shed on American soil. So the government, the Congress, they save his butt. Declare war on Mexico. Now, wait a minute. According to the Constitution, why was there a standing army that could go to war with Mexico? How'd all them fellers, that Grant and Robert E. Lee and Sherman and those guys that was in the military at that time, how'd that all work out? It's kind of strange if you go reading it, but you can see the criminal corruption involved. So anyway, they had this high power, big army. They go down there and they kill off a lot of these peons and farmers and kids that got a gun trying to stop them from coming into Mexico. And when it's all done and well and done, they demand that they own all the land, including Texas, from there to the Pacific Ocean, with the exception of what the British owned up there around the Oregon territories. So you see, they're eliminating another border under questionable circumstances. Well, it didn't last long. They was doing all kinds of stuff back there in Congress, raising all kinds of hell, talking about stuff, because when the Constitution came in effect, there were 13 states, 13 sovereign states that created a union, so together they could be strong. Then when the Civil War comes along, I think, if I remember right, there was 26 of them states. But it was all over slavery. Wait a minute. You go back and you get to read. You read about the money. You read about the industrialization in the North. You read about the profits. You read about how the British and the French and the Germans and that were paying much more for cotton and for these products that the South had than the North was willing to pay. You get there and you pay attention to that. Slavery was no big deal except a bunch of fanatical religionists. Hate to tell you that, but that's the truth. Now, if that had been a civil war in about 20 to 25 years, slavery as it was practiced then just kind of disappeared out of the world, basically. It was the British, the French, all them. Was done. There was about 4 million plus slaves in 1865 that were free. There was several 100,000 free men, black people, black men, African descent, that were free, that weren't slaves. But the big thing about the thing was that Mason-Dixon line and all that stuff, that wonderful speech that old Abraham Lincoln had made about 77 years ago up there in Gettysburg after the Gettysburg War, when all them men was dead on both sides. He goes, it's got such a beautiful thing about that nation. One nation. And a nation so conceived, so dedicated, shall not perish from the earth. There was no one nation. There was 26 or so sovereign states, sovereign nations in a union prior to the Civil War. At the end of the Civil War, there was one nation. The state's legal borders had been eliminated. More open borders. There was an agreement in the Union how these states was going to work together. That all got eliminated. And you had two parties that run everything. And them two parties was all based on power and money. The Democrats and the Republicans we got today. Did you ever see that movie, The Godfather? Part 1, Part 2, whatever. That's what those parties, the Democratic National Committee and the Republican National Committee, those are the two godfathers. They are Gotti and whatever, all them other dudes that live back there in New York and everything. That's what they are. And they're telling us they're not. Well, rich men, the railroad, look at all them sections they got. The government, look at all the sections they got of that new land for schools, sections they call them. Look at all that stuff. According to the Constitution, the federal was supposed to buy from the states what land they needed for armories, for forts, etc., etc. I wonder how much they paid for Wyoming, for that little place called Yellowstone National Park. I wonder how much they paid for all them other national parks to the state, because they'd had to collect it from all the citizens. Open borders. We don't have borders anymore. We are slaves. You don't think so? You know that house a lot of you own? Go check out if you don't pay your taxes for a while. Go check out if the bank wants to foreclose for one reason or another. Go check out about eminent domain if the local city, state, county, state, and federal government get together and want to take that land for a swimming pool or for a bike path or something. Check it out. Slavery, 13th Amendment, what a joke. Hey, and another thing, why don't you go count up and get them to tell us how many actual slaves there are? They're always talking about human trafficking. How many people from China? How many people from Eastern Europe? How many people from all these other places are in the United States working as slaves? Sex slaves. Any boy from the age of 5 or 6 on up, any girl from the age of 5 or 6 on up, anybody, they're all open to be sex slaves to some bunch of people. Check it out. Maybe we ought to get mad about this and start telling them criminal corruptors that's telling us what to do, what they need to do. Well, I've had fun. Nobody will listen to this, but that's okay. Talk to you again.